Welcome to the All Out Leadership Podcast, hosted by Pastor Eric Lawson, where each episode is uniquely designed to help you live all out by bringing you practical leadership from a biblical perspective delivered in 10 minutes or less. So whether you're a business leader, serving in ministry, or simply looking to grow in your leadership, this podcast is for you. Before we dive into this week's topic, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and download the show notes at ericlawson.com/podcast. And while you're at it, feel free to share the content on social media. Now, let's join Pastor Eric for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to another edition of the All Out Leadership Podcast. Last week we looked at David. He's in his 60s, and he encountered one of Goliath's brothers, and we learned an important lesson. The Goliath you kill today has a brother waiting for you in your future, and there'll come a time that that giant will be too big for you to take on alone. And David's pinned to the ground. He's about to be taken out. And one of his mighty men, his band of brothers, comes to him and rescues him. And we learn the value of not doing life alone, that we can't win every battle independent from being connected in spiritual community. So we pick up here in the same story, 1 Samuel 21, verse 17. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, "You shall go out no more with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel." David had grown older. He had grown a little bit rusty in battle. And again, this guy's spear was half the weight of Goliath's. It was 30 pounds. That's big. But Goliath was 60 pounds. And so we learned something here. Number one, knowing your strength may be your greatest weakness. And knowing your weakness may be your greatest strength. See, David compared who he was at 17 to who he is now. He was sharp. He was inside. I can do this. I can take on this guy. But he failed to take into account that his body was no longer 17. And so knowing your weakness actually might be your greatest strength. As I'm getting older, I'm 53 now. I know I look young. Thank you for all those emails and the hand claps and amens. I hear them. I'm realizing I don't have the same stamina that I had when I was 23 years old in ministry. I could work 16, 17-hour days and then go to Bible school, and I could live on 4 hours of sleep and energy drinks, and I did that 7 days a week, and it was awesome. Well, I can't do that anymore. So I'm 53. I'm realizing that my body needs, as I get older, more rest. Power naps. I mean, I hated naps as a kid. I was the kid that was every preschool teacher's nightmare. Today I'm like, Lord, thank you for power naps. They're powerful. I love it. And so as I'm getting older, I'm having to adjust to understand my biological rhythms. And just realizing I'm not what I used to be physically. And as I'm looking into the future of ministry, of legacy, I'm making sure that I'm building plans that I have that younger generation and those younger teams that are around us, the Abashis, to step in to fight the giants that I can't. Now, I used to be able to take that on. I used to be able to run at that pace, not quite so much anymore. As I get older, the goal is really to move a little bit more into the sage role, mentoring role, discipling role, equipping role, and not trying to act like I'm 17 years old. And man, nothing looks worse than a 53-year-old guy in a pair of skinny jeans thinking he's 17, right? So, as you grow in leader, as you grow in your business, as you're growing in your company, just realize you might not be 17 anymore. All right. And so do what David did. Make sure that you really know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and that you're compensating for that. Now, who in your life loves you enough to tell you the truth? Now, this guy really had some guts to go to David. Hey, love you, but you ain't going out with this anymore. That's a really bold statement to David. And I love this guy that he loved David enough to go, hey, look, I'm going to talk to you as a friend. I've done a lot of battles with you. You just need to stay home. And what he really said, look, you're more valuable to us running the kingdom than you are out here on the battlefield. And so there are just times realizing where you're most valuable in your organization, where you add the greatest value. And sometimes it's really standing aside, stepping aside, and letting younger generations and other leaders, emerging leaders, have an opportunity to grow. Look, if you stay in your seat forever and you don't, move and graduate, you're robbing somebody else that should be emerging and growing of that opportunity because you're blocking it. So always be looking, how can I make room for emerging leaders? I love Proverbs 27, verse 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. I once preached a whole sermon with my zipper down. I go, hey, where were my friends during that? And you're all like, well, what sermon was that? Well, it's not online. I'll tell you that, okay? But a true friend will tell you when you got spinach in your teeth, when you got your fly down, and when you need to brush your teeth and you forgot your deodorant. That's a real friend. And so how you respond and how you react when somebody gives you those painful, truthful statements really says a lot about you. And it also sends a message to them, because what you'll find is if you react and if you get defensive when somebody tries to go, hey man, I love you. Can I share something with you? Hey, maybe there's a blind spot here. And you react, you just said, I don't want to hear any more from you regarding that. And what you just did is shut down future opportunities for feedback that could be vital and, in this case, life-saving. And so respond with humility. Respond with, hey, thank you for caring enough to tell me about that. Man, you know what? I'll really consider that. Thank you so much. I'm sure you took a risk. It was probably uncomfortable for you to be honest with me. Thank you for that. I'm going to become a better person because you cared enough to share. And remember, we need that younger generation. Keep adding to those that are around you. And remember, every generation's weird to the previous generation. The generation who loved Elvis, their parents go, these guys are nuts. Today Elvis is like preschool stuff when it comes to rock music. And there was a whole generation freaked out over it, and maybe rightfully so. But every generation looks weird to the generation before them. And a lot of generations, Gen X, Gen Z, I don't know where we are in the alphabet anymore. I gave up trying to follow. But I just know this, everyone is going to look a little bit different, and they're going to bring their own unique challenges, but they also bring their unique benefits. So rather than complaining about, whatever generation you're trying to lead, why not see the value inside of them? Why not harness their strengths? Because you have something to give to them that they need, but they also have something to give to you that you need. So I encourage you within your organization, if you look out there in your company, in your business, and everybody's as old as you, that's scary. If you're pastoring a church and everybody's in your congregation looks like you, that's really scary. A healthy organization, a healthy church is generational. I love how God always refers to, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God is a generational God. You should be having 3 generations in your business. You should be having at least 3 generations inside of a healthy church, because God is a generational God. All right, there we go. Important insights from the life of David.
Thank you for joining us on the All Out Leadership Podcast. We hope you gained new biblical insight that challenged you to grow in your leadership. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we would love your help in getting the content out farther. You can help by subscribing to the podcast at ericlawson.com/podcast and telling others about it. Next week, Pastor Eric will be back with another episode. So until then, we hope you have a great week being an all-out leader.